Every battle you fight begins long before the world sees it. It starts in your thoughts, your habits, your self-talk. Discipline isn't about punishment, it's about power. You lose control inside, you lose everywhere else. But when you master your inner world, when your mind obeys your mission, no distraction, no doubt, no weakness can stand against you. This is your training ground to master discipline within and conquer everything else. Chapter 1. Stop waiting to feel ready. You keep waiting. Waiting for the right time. Waiting for motivation. Waiting for that spark, that sign, that perfect morning when everything finally clicks. But that moment you're waiting for, it's never coming. Discipline doesn't wait for emotion. Discipline creates emotion. You move first, the feeling catches up later. That's the truth no one tells you. You don't start when you feel ready, you start, and that's what makes you ready. You have a choice every single day to move or to wait, to act or to stall, to command your life or to keep negotiating with your comfort zone. Do you think successful people are different? They're not. They just stopped letting feelings make decisions for them. They act, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. That's the key. When you wake up tired, when your head tells you to hit snooze, when your body whispers, "not today," that's the real battlefield. The battle between comfort and control, between your emotions and your mission. An elite athlete trains when the camera isn't rolling, when no one is watching, when every muscle says stop and they do one more rep anyway. Why? Because they understand something most people don't. Consistency builds identity. They don't train because they feel motivated. They train because it's who they are. They've programmed themselves to move before they think. They don't wait for the feeling, they create it. And you can do the same. You must do the same. Stop saying, "I'll start when I'm ready." You'll be waiting forever. You'll never wake up one day magically prepared to do the hard things. Readiness is an illusion, a lie your mind tells you to protect you from growth, because growth feels like pain, and your mind is wired to avoid pain. But here's the secret. Pain is not punishment, it's information. It tells you where the limits are. It shows you where the growth begins. That's where discipline steps in. You move first, the feeling catches up later. Say it again. You move first, the feeling catches up later. Every time you act despite resistance, you train your brain to trust you. You teach yourself that your word means something, and that trust is the foundation of real self-respect. You think confidence comes from feeling good? No. Confidence comes from evidence, from showing up again and again, even when no one claps for you. That's why athletes, soldiers, and leaders seem unshakable, because they've built evidence through action. Their mind listens to them because they've proven they can be trusted, and that trust comes from one thing: discipline. You have a choice. You always have a choice. To stay in motion or stay in comfort. To take command or make excuses. To rise or repeat. Discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent. It's about doing what you said you'd do long after the mood you said it in has left you. You don't need permission to start. You don't need motivation to begin. You don't need clarity, energy, or the right time. You just need a single decision: move now. Stop waiting to feel ready. That feeling is a trap. Let's get real for a second. Think about every goal you've postponed, every idea you've delayed, every plan that never left your notebook. Why? Because you said, "not yet." You said, "soon." You said, "when I'm ready." And each time you said that, you built a habit of hesitation. You taught your mind that delay equals safety, but delay is death, death to momentum, death to growth. You want to know why the same people keep winning? Because they move while everyone else waits for the perfect conditions. They act on 70% clarity and adjust as they go. They trust action more than emotion. They understand the law of motion. Once you start moving, everything becomes easier. That's the secret most people never learn. You don't need to feel good to do good. You don't need to believe in yourself to take the first step. You don't need to see the whole staircase, you just take the first step anyway. That's discipline. That's power. That's mastery within. Here's how you apply it. Tomorrow morning, when your alarm rings, get up. No debate, no delay. When your mind says 5 more minutes, say no, I move first. When you don't feel like working out, do 5 minutes anyway. When you don't feel like writing or studying or creating, just start. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for clarity. Don't wait for ready. The act of beginning generates the energy you were missing. That's the key. Action creates emotion. Movement creates motivation, not the other way around. Your emotions will try to trick you. They'll whisper that you're not prepared, that you'll fail, that you should wait. Ignore them. You're not here to be ruled by feelings. You're here to command them. You're here to take back the steering wheel of your own life. You move first, the feeling catches up later. Say it until it sinks in. Write it down. Put it on your wall, because it's the foundation of everything else that follows in this journey. Every chapter in this book will build on that single truth. Discipline begins when feelings end. You must become the kind of person who moves regardless of mood, because the more you move, the more power you build. And the more power you build, the less you'll rely on fragile motivation. That's how transformation happens, not at once, but one small act of defiance at a time. Defiance against comfort, against doubt, against delay. Remember this, you'll never feel ready. You'll never have the perfect conditions. You'll never find the right moment. You create readiness through repetition. You create strength through struggle. You create progress through motion. You move first, the feeling catches up later. That's the mantra of masters. That's how you build discipline within. That's how you conquer everything else. You've now learned the first command of discipline, to act before emotion, to move before motivation. You've broken the illusion of readiness. Now it's time to go deeper, because after you stop waiting, you'll face something even stronger, your own mind. You've taken your first step to mastery. Now, let's expose the real enemy. Chapter 2. Your mind is lying to you.
Your mind is not your enemy, but it's not your friend either. It's a survival machine built to protect, not to progress. And that's where most people lose. See, your mind's #1 job is to keep you safe. Safe from pain, safe from effort, safe from risk. But safety is not growth. Comfort is not peace. And the voice in your head, that calm, reasonable whisper that says, not today, maybe later, you deserve a break. That voice is the reason most people never see their full potential. Let's get one thing straight. Your mind lies to you. Every single day. It tells you you're tired when you're not. It tells you you're not ready when you are. It tells you to wait for motivation before you act. But the truth? Motivation doesn't come first. Action does. And your mind hates that truth because it breaks its control. You have a choice: to listen to the voice that keeps you small, or to move in spite of it. That's the key. The voice of comfort. That voice of comfort, that internal negotiator, sounds gentle. It sounds logical. It says things like, "You've done enough today," or "You'll start when you feel more confident." It even convinces you it's being kind to you. But let's call it what it is: the comfort trap. It's your brain's defense system, programmed by thousands of years of survival instinct. When it senses discomfort, fear, uncertainty, effort, it pulls the alarm. It tells you to stop. It tells you to wait. It tells you that slowing down means you're being smart. But listen closely. That's not intelligence. That's hesitation disguised as wisdom. Every time you obey that voice, you strengthen it. Every time you delay, you confirm the lie. Every time you hesitate, you lose momentum. The lie is simple. Later. The truth is now. The 5-second window. Here's the reality of human behavior. You have about 5 seconds before your brain talks you out of what you know you need to do. That's it. 5 seconds between impulse and hesitation. You think about getting up early? 5 seconds later, you're scrolling your phone. You think about speaking up in a meeting. 5 seconds later, your brain reminds you of every past failure. You think about starting that project. 5 seconds later, comfort wins again. This isn't about being lazy. It's biology. It's the mind doing what it's designed to do. Avoid uncertainty. But discipline doesn't care about biology. Discipline doesn't ask for comfort. Discipline moves first. That's the difference between an average life and an extraordinary one. You move first. The feeling catches up later. So when your mind whispers, wait, you count backward, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you move. You act before your brain has time to interfere. That's how you retrain it. That's how you take back control. Comfort feeds weakness. Comfort feels good. It's warm, familiar, safe, but it feeds weakness. You can't build strength inside comfort. You can't build discipline in ease. The muscles that matter most, your focus, your courage, your consistency, are built under stress. Every great athlete, every top performer, every disciplined mind, they all know this. They train when it hurts. They work when they don't feel like it. They show up when nobody's watching. Why? Because they understand one truth. You can't trust your feelings. Feelings are weather. They change with the wind. If you build your life on them, you'll be tossed in every direction. But if you build it on discipline, you'll stand firm no matter what storm hits. That's the mindset of mastery. Doing what's required even when it's uncomfortable, boring, or painful. Especially when it's uncomfortable, boring, or painful. You don't need to feel ready. You need to move. Train the mind to obey. Your mind is like a wild horse. If you let it lead, it'll take you in circles, chasing comfort, avoiding pain, never moving forward. But if you take the reins, if you show it who's in command, it'll carry you farther than you ever imagined. You train your mind by acting against its lies. You train it every time you wake up when you said you would. You train it every time you do the reps after you've hit fatigue. You train it every time you say no to distraction, no to comfort, no to the easy way out. That's how you rewire it, not by thinking, by doing. Action builds identity. Every disciplined action says something powerful to your brain. I'm not who I was. I'm not the slave of my feelings. I decide what happens next. And eventually, your brain believes you. It stops resisting and starts following. That's the shift from victim to master. That's when discipline becomes natural, not because it's easy, but because it's who you are. The trap of logic. Your mind is clever. When fear doesn't work, it uses logic. It says,
You need to plan first. You should research more. You should wait for the perfect time. And all of that sounds smart, but it's still hesitation. It's still fear dressed as logic. The truth is, clarity comes from action. You learn by doing. You grow by trying. You find the way by walking it. Perfection isn't the goal, progress is. You have a choice. Think about the path or take the first step. That's the key. The discipline of now. Your mind loves the word later, but later is how dreams die quietly. Later becomes next week. Next week becomes next year. Next year becomes regret. You don't rise by waiting. You rise by acting, here, now, in the middle of the uncertainty. The disciplined ones don't feel ready. They move anyway. They act while their mind screams, stop. They understand the truth. You can't think your way into discipline. You act your way into it. So when your mind lies, expose it. When it whispers later, answer back, no, now. That's how you reclaim control. You have a choice, to live by the lies of comfort or the truth of discipline, to follow the easy path or forge the stronger one. Every moment is a test. Every hesitation is a chance to choose differently. You've seen the truth. Your mind lies to protect you, not grow you. You've learned that every delay strengthens doubt and every action builds identity. Now it's time to face the next layer of mastery, the hidden power behind your daily habits, the small decisions that decide everything. Chapter 3. Discipline is freedom.
Freedom. Everyone wants it, everyone talks about it, but very few actually earn it. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want. Freedom is doing what you must, and still having peace in your soul. That's the paradox of control. The more disciplined you become, the freer you are. It sounds backward, but it's the truth. When you control your habits stop controlling you. When you master your emotions, the world can no longer manipulate you. When you build structure, you stop being a prisoner to chaos. Discipline isn't a cage. Structure is not your prison. It's your liberation. The illusion of freedom. Most people think freedom means no rules, no schedules, no structure. Do what you want, when you want, how you want. But look around. That mindset doesn't create freedom. It creates addiction. It creates confusion. It creates weakness. If you wake up whenever you feel like it, you become a slave to your feelings. If you eat whatever you crave, you become a prisoner to your impulses. If you say yes to every distraction, you lose control over your time. You think you're free, but you're just being controlled by everything around you. The truth is simple. Without discipline, freedom destroys itself. Without structure, potential collapses. That's the painful truth most people never face. You don't get peace by doing less. You get peace by doing what matters, consistently. The soldier's paradox. Think about a soldier. Every day is routine. Early mornings, precise tasks, tight schedules. From the outside, it looks like restriction. It looks like they're trapped in endless structure. But ask a soldier who's lived that life. They'll tell you the truth. That routine gives them peace. That discipline gives them control. Because when your actions are aligned, your mind is quiet. There's no wasted energy deciding what to do. No chaos, no guilt, no confusion. Discipline removes the noise. It frees the mind to focus on what actually matters. That's why people who live with discipline move with calm confidence. They don't panic, they don't drift. They know who they are and what comes next. That's the real freedom, the ability to move through life with clarity. The prison of comfort. Let's be honest. The reason most people resist discipline is because it feels like restriction. It feels like losing control. But it's the opposite. Comfort is the real prison, because comfort numbs you. It makes you predictable. It keeps you stuck in the same loop, chasing short-term relief, avoiding long-term growth. You think you're free, but you're just being controlled by everything around you. The truth is simple. Without discipline, freedom destroys itself. Without structure, potential collapses. That's the painful truth most people never face. You don't get peace by doing less. You get peace by doing what matters, consistently. The structure is not your prison. It's your liberation.
The peace of order. Chaos creates anxiety. Order creates calm. Your brain loves clarity. It thrives when it knows what to expect. That's why disciplined people seem calmer under pressure. They've built systems. They've built order. They've rehearsed the hard moments before they arrive. It's not that they don't feel fear. They just don't rely on feelings. A disciplined person doesn't wait for the mood to work. They work until it becomes the mood. They don't pray for motivation. They act until motivation appears. That's the key. You want peace? Stop chasing comfort. Build order. You want freedom? Build consistency. Because every rule you follow removes a piece of mental chaos. Every structure you build removes a piece of anxiety. That's why discipline doesn't trap you. It frees you. How to build freedom through structure. Here's how you turn this philosophy into practice. Define your non-negotiables. Decide the 3 things that matter most to your progress and protect them like your life depends on it, because it does. Wake time, workout, work focus, whatever they are, lock them in. Create ritual, not routine. Routine feels forced. Ritual feels sacred. Turn your habits into anchors, things that remind you who you're becoming. Make your structure feel meaningful, not mechanical. Embrace the repetition. Repetition is how identity forms. The more you show up, the less effort it takes. You become what you repeatedly do. You don't need more motivation. You need a system that doesn't rely on it. That's the difference between those who dream and those who rise. You have a choice. Live in chaos or live in command. That's the key. Freedom through obedience. Freedom comes from obedience, not to others, but to your higher self. Every time you obey your excuses, you become weaker. Every time you obey your discipline, you become stronger. Discipline doesn't silence your freedom. It refines it. It gives you the strength to say no to what doesn't matter, and the focus to say yes to what does. When you can control yourself, nothing outside can control you. That's real freedom. When you can delay gratification, no manipulation works on you. That's real power. When you can stay consistent regardless of mood, you're unstoppable. That's real peace. Structure is not your prison. It's your liberation. Repeat it until your mind believes it. The cost of chaos. Now look at the other side. No structure, no discipline, no order. You wake up to confusion. You live reacting instead of creating. You end every day wondering where your time went, wondering why nothing changed. That's the cost of chaos. And the longer you live there, the heavier the weight becomes. The only way out is through the gate of discipline. You can't think your way to freedom. You have to act your way there, one structured step at a time. Freedom is built, not found. You earn it through consistency. You protect it with discipline. You've learned the paradox. You've seen that the walls you build around your habits aren't cages, they're protection. They give you clarity, they give you peace, they give you power. Now it's time to master the next layer of internal control, the art of emotional restraint. Because once you can act with discipline, the next test is learning not to react at all.
You lose power the moment you react. You give it away to people, to emotions, to circumstances that don't deserve it. That's how most people live, emotionally hijacked, always reacting, never responding. But if you want mastery, true, unshakable control, you must learn the art of non-reaction. Calm is a weapon. Silence is strategy. Composure is control. When you react, you lose control. When you pause, you reclaim it. React less. Respond better. Regain power. The trap of emotion. Most people are slaves to their emotions. They let anger dictate their words. They let fear decide their actions. They let frustration destroy their focus. They think they're being real, but they're not being real. They're being ruled. Emotion is natural. Reaction is optional. That's the difference between ordinary and disciplined minds. You don't need to suppress emotion. You need to master it. Feel it, process it, but never let it lead. Your emotions are data, not direction. They can inform you, but they shouldn't command you. The key is space, that small moment between stimulus and response. That space decides your future. You have a choice in that space, and that's the key. Choice over impulse. The 3-second rule. In the military, in the boardroom, and in elite training, they all practice one rule. Pause before you act. 3 seconds, that's it. A soldier feels fear. 3 seconds to breathe before moving. A CEO faces conflict. 3 seconds before responding. A parent feels anger. 3 seconds before speaking. 3 seconds can save a mission, a career, a relationship. That pause is power, because in that pause, you decide who you're going to be. Will you be reactive, or will you be composed? Reacting gives the world control over you. Responding gives you control over the world. That's the difference between emotional chaos and emotional discipline. React less. Respond better. Regain power. Calm wins. The calmest person in the room always wins, not because they're smarter, but because they're steady. While others panic, they plan. While others explode, they analyze. While others take offense, they observe. That's why true leaders, elite performers, and wise individuals all share one skill: emotional neutrality. They understand this truth: the one who stays calm decides the outcome. When you don't react, you make others reveal themselves. Their frustration, their ego, their lack of control, it all becomes visible. You, on the other hand, remain untouchable. The calm mind sees solutions that a reactive mind never will, because emotion clouds judgment, and chaos destroys clarity. So when the pressure rises, remind yourself, calm wins. It always does. How to build emotional control. You don't train calmness in chaos. You train it in the quiet moments when nothing's at stake, so that when chaos arrives, you've already built the muscle. Here's how. 1. Practice the pause. Every time you feel irritation, stop. 3 seconds. Breathe in, hold, breathe out. Let the emotion pass through without acting on it. 2.
Delay digital reactions. Don't reply instantly to messages that trigger you. Don't argue online. Don't defend everything. Wait an hour. Let logic return before you respond. 3. Reframe the attack. When someone disrespects you, remember, it's not about you. It's about their own lack of control. Their chaos doesn't deserve your peace. 4. Choose the response that protects your energy. Ask, does this reaction make me stronger or weaker? If it drains your focus, it's not worth it. That's emotional discipline. Not emotionless, but emotionally mature. You have a choice. That's the key. The power of detachment. Non-reaction isn't passive. It's a strategy. It's the art of emotional detachment, staying involved but not entangled. You can care deeply and still remain calm. You can be passionate and still be poised. Detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't let feelings decide your future. You rise above the noise. You become the observer, not the reactor. That's why disciplined minds move differently. They don't chase validation. They don't fight every battle. They don't need to prove themselves every time they're challenged, because they understand reaction is weakness disguised as strength, and silence is strength disguised as patience. Every time you stay calm under pressure, you rewire your brain for mastery. Every time you choose silence over shouting, you build internal peace. Every time you choose to observe instead of react, you take your power back. React less, respond better, regain power. Why calm feels hard. Your mind loves reactions because it feels powerful. It gives you a surge, adrenaline, emotion, validation. It feels like action, but it's not. It's noise. That's why calm feels unnatural at first. You'll want to defend yourself. You'll want to explain. You'll want to match energy. Don't. Every time you hold back, you gain control. Every time you pause, you grow stronger. The mind hates stillness because stillness reveals truth. You start to see how much of your life has been driven by emotion, not intention. But that's how mastery begins, with awareness. You can't change what you don't notice. So start noticing your triggers. What sets you off? Who pushes your buttons? What thoughts pull you back into chaos? When you identify them, you diffuse them. Because triggers only have power when they're hidden. That's emotional freedom, awareness without reaction. Power in the pause. Remember this, the most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who speaks last. Because they've seen everything, they've heard everything. And when they finally speak, their words carry weight. That's the power of the pause. It gives your actions authority. It gives your words credibility. It gives your presence power. When you master non-reaction, you become unpredictable. No one can manipulate you. No one can trigger you. No one can control you. That's the real definition of power. Control over self. You've learned the truth. Control isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering it. You've learned to pause, to detach, to hold your power instead of wasting it on reaction. Now it's time to face the next battlefield, the war inside your own head, the voice that bargains, delays, and talks you out of greatness. Because external control means nothing if you keep losing internal negotiations. Chapter 5. Stop negotiating with yourself.
You know exactly what needs to be done. Wake up, work out, study, build, create, move. But every morning, the same voice shows up. Soft, reasonable, logical. It says, 5 more minutes. I'll start tomorrow. I deserve a break. That voice is not your friend. It's the negotiator, and it's the #1 killer of discipline. Every time you negotiate with yourself, you train your mind to question your own command. And the more you negotiate, the weaker your word becomes. You lose self-trust, not because you're lazy, but because you keep breaking your own promises. You said you'd wake up early. You said you'd stop scrolling. You said you'd start building something real. And then what happened? You started negotiating with yourself like you were in a courtroom, trying to justify failure. That's the trap. You think discipline is about fighting the world, but most people never even get to that level. They lose the battle inside their own head before the day begins. You have a choice. Either you become your own commander, or you stay your own hostage. That's the key. Let's get this straight. Discipline doesn't fail because of lack of motivation. It fails because of negotiation. The mind creates 1,000 tiny deals to avoid discomfort. I'll just skip today and go harder tomorrow. I'll start the diet on Monday. I'll post the video when I'm more confident. Each one feels harmless. Each one feels justified. But each one breaks your credibility with yourself. When you say something and then don't follow through, your brain learns one thing. You don't mean what you say. And once your brain stops believing your commands, you're done. That's why most people never change. Not because they can't, but because their words have lost power. You can't lead yourself if you don't trust yourself. You can't trust yourself if you keep negotiating. Let's talk real world. A soldier doesn't negotiate with the alarm clock. An athlete doesn't negotiate with soreness. A leader doesn't negotiate with fear. They execute, because they've built a mind that understands one rule. When you say it, you do it. No debate. That's the line. That's the standard. Every time you skip a negotiation, you win a small war inside. That's how self-respect is built, not through affirmations or motivation, but through follow-through. Every rep you do after your brain says quit is proof that you're in charge. Every early morning you show up, despite the voice saying rest, is proof that your words matter. The real confidence you're chasing doesn't come from looking good or sounding smart. It comes from knowing that when you give yourself a command, you'll obey it. That's the foundation of power. That's the foundation of freedom. And it starts by shutting down negotiation. Here's the rule. No deal with weakness. The voice that wants comfort, silence it. The voice that says, it's fine, skip it, destroy it. You are not here to debate your purpose. The people who win in life aren't the ones who feel motivated. They're the ones who act without feelings. They've made the decision once, and they don't revisit it. They don't renegotiate it every morning. That's the difference between amateurs and masters. Amateurs need daily convincing. Masters made their choice years ago and never reopened the conversation. You want to grow? Make fewer decisions. Pick the path once, commit once, follow through daily. Every time you say just 5 more minutes, you're telling your mind that your comfort is more important than your command. But every time you override that urge, you're teaching your mind that you mean business. Discipline is a form of programming. You are either programming strength or you're programming weakness.
There's no middle ground. You can't negotiate your way to greatness. You can only command your way there. The truth is, you already know what to do. You don't need another plan, another trick, or another hack. You need to stop making emotional bargains with yourself. You don't need their permission. You don't even need your own approval. You need obedience to your own vision. That's the key. Let's get practical. The next time you say, "I don't feel like it," you move anyway. The next time you think, "I'll do it later," you start anyway. The next time you start calculating comfort, you cut the conversation short. Here's the method. Catch, cancel, command. 1. Catch the negotiation. Notice when the inner voice starts to bargain. 2. Cancel it. Interrupt the thought. Literally say, "No deals." 3. Command yourself. Act immediately before the feeling comes. You move first. The motivation catches up later. That's the law of momentum. You don't rise to your intentions. You fall to your standards. And your standard should be simple. When I say it, I do it. No debate. That's how self-respect is built. That's how discipline compounds. And that's how you stop being a victim of your own emotions. Here's what's beautiful. The less you negotiate, the quieter your mind becomes. The mental noise fades because you've removed the courtroom from your head. You no longer argue with yourself. You just act. And when you act consistently, peace shows up. Peace isn't passive. It's the reward for self-command. You don't need control over the world when you control yourself. You don't need to manage everyone else when your own mind follows orders. That's the real win. So stop negotiating with yourself. Stop debating with weakness. When you give yourself a command, execute it. Every command followed is a vote for your stronger self. Every negotiation avoided is another brick in your foundation of power. You have a choice. Either keep cutting deals with your comfort or declare war on it. Because in this game, comfort is the enemy and follow-through is freedom. You've just learned how to silence the inner negotiator. But now we move deeper. Because once you've stopped arguing with yourself, a new challenge appears. The loop that turns one act of discipline into a lifestyle. You've built the foundation. Now it's time to create momentum. Chapter 6. The Discipline Loop. How to build unstoppable consistency.
Discipline isn't built in a day. It's built in loops. Most people think they need more motivation. What they actually need is more repetition. Because discipline isn't about doing something once, it's about making it automatic. Motivation fades. Systems don't. That's the key. You can't rely on how you feel. You can only rely on what you repeat. If you want consistency, you need a loop, a system that triggers discipline whether you feel like it or not. Let's call it the discipline loop. It has 3 parts: cue, action, reward. You build the cue. You execute the action. You earn the reward. Then you repeat it again, and again, and again, until it becomes who you are. Habit builds identity. Identity builds consistency. Let's break this down. Step 1. The cue. Every disciplined person has triggers that start the loop. It could be the sound of the alarm, the sight of your shoes by the door, the open notebook on your desk, the coffee cup before work. Discipline doesn't start with inspiration. It starts with a cue, a signal to your brain that it's time to act. You're not waiting to feel ready. You're creating an environment that removes the need to feel anything at all. That's how elite soldiers do it. That's how world-class performers live. They design cues that make the first step automatic. A soldier doesn't think, "Should I train today?" The alarm goes off. That's the cue. They move. The loop begins. You have a choice. You can build cues that push you toward strength or ones that pull you toward comfort. That's the difference between discipline and drift. Step 2, the action. This is where the work happens. The cue triggers the action. The workout, the cold shower, the writing session, the early start. But here's the truth. The first 30 seconds are the hardest. Once you start moving, the resistance loses its grip. So stop thinking, stop analyzing. Move. You move first, the feeling catches up later. It's not about being perfect. It's about repeating the motion enough times that your body stops asking for permission. Action beats intention, every time. And here's what separates the consistent from the inconsistent. They don't let feelings negotiate with action. The loop runs. No interruptions, no excuses. You act, not because it feels good, but because it's the system. That's the key. Step 3, the reward. This is where most people mess up. They expect the reward to be external, praise, money, validation. But true discipline builds its own internal reward. When you complete the loop, you feel something deeper, self-respect. That's the real prize. The moment you finish the task you didn't want to do, a small voice inside says, "See, you did it." That's dopamine earned through discipline, not through distraction. That's the reward that rewires your brain to crave progress instead of comfort. Every time you complete the loop, you strengthen your identity as someone who follows through. And once that identity locks in, consistency becomes your default.
Habit builds identity. Identity builds consistency. And consistency builds power. Let's talk about some examples. In the military, soldiers live by loops. The cue, 5 a.m. alarm. The action, wake, clean, train, prepare. The reward, order, readiness, control. They don't need motivation because the system is motivation. The loop replaces emotion with rhythm, and rhythm builds mastery. Entrepreneurs do the same. The cue, morning routine. Journal, plan, execute. The action, create, sell, refine. The reward, momentum, progress, clarity. They don't ask, "Do I feel like it?" They follow their loops until their loops define them. That's why the disciplined seem unstoppable. It's not because they're stronger. It's because they've automated strength. They've trained their brain to act before emotion enters the room. You might be thinking, that sounds robotic. It's not. It's freedom. Because here's the truth. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want. Freedom is knowing exactly what to do and doing it automatically. The structure is not your prison. It's your liberation. When your loops are strong, your mind is free to create, to think, to grow. You're no longer battling the same internal resistance every day. You're no longer stuck restarting your life every Monday. You've replaced chaos with rhythm, and rhythm is power. You wake, you execute, you repeat. That's the loop. That's life. Now here's the warning. If you don't build your loops intentionally, your brain will build them for you, unconsciously. Scroll, snack, procrastinate, repeat. That's a loop too, but it's one that kills momentum. Every time you repeat a behavior, you carve a groove in your mind. Do it long enough, and the groove becomes your identity. So ask yourself, what loops are you running every day? Are they building you or breaking you? You have a choice. You can run loops of distraction or loops of discipline. You can build systems that make you weaker or systems that make you unstoppable. That's the difference between average and elite. Average people live in emotional loops. Disciplined people live in structured loops. One wakes up tired, the other wakes up ready. One breaks promises, the other builds them. So how do you start? You start small. Tiny loops done daily. Wake up, drink water, make your bed. That's one loop. Sit down, open notebook, write 1 page. That's another. Work out, finish, track it. That's the loop of growth. Repeat them until they no longer feel like decisions. Repeat them until your brain stops asking, "Do I have to?" Because once the loop becomes part of you, the question disappears. That's how discipline compounds. That's how identity shifts. Habit builds identity. Identity builds consistency. And consistency builds power. You don't need more motivation. You need fewer decisions, because decisions drain energy. Loops save it. When the system is in place, discipline stops being effort. It becomes automatic. And that's when life changes. You stop relying on willpower. You stop breaking promises. You stop restarting every week. You finally feel momentum. And once momentum is built, it becomes unstoppable. That's the discipline loop. That's how you win long term. Because the goal isn't to push harder forever. It's to make the push automatic. The goal isn't to be motivated every morning. It's to not need motivation at all. You have a choice. Build the loop that builds you. You've mastered consistency. You've learned to move without permission. But there's one more skill, one final form of power that completes your transformation. It's not action, it's control. Not of others, but of yourself. It's silent. The ability to hold your peace when chaos screams. The ability to stay still when the world provokes. That's the next level of discipline. You've built the loop. Now you'll master stillness. Chapter 7. Silence is your superpower.
In a world that never stops talking, silence has become a weapon, and the few who master it rule themselves. Most people can't handle silence. They fill it with noise, distractions, endless scrolling, empty words. Because silence forces you to face yourself. It strips away the illusions. It reveals the truth. But here's the paradox. Silence isn't weakness. It's power. Quiet is where power collects. Every moment you choose silence over reaction, you gain control. Every time you withhold a word, a comment, a response, you rise above the noise. That's the discipline of peace. That's the true mark of strength. You don't need to announce your growth. You don't need to defend your choices. You don't need to explain your silence. Because silence speaks, and it speaks louder than noise ever could. Let's break it down. There are 3 levels of silence: the silence of the tongue, the silence of the mind, and the silence of the soul. Each one is discipline. Each one is strength. Each one separates the reactive from the powerful. 1. The silence of the tongue. This is the first level of power. It's the moment you realize not every thought deserves a voice. The weak argue. The wise observe. The impulsive react. The disciplined pause.
You have a choice in every confrontation to speak from ego or to act from control. That's the key. The world teaches you to clap back, to say something, to defend your name. But silence protects what words often destroy, your peace. When you don't respond, you keep your energy, you protect your focus, you maintain your dignity. Think about the Stoics. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but he rarely spoke about himself. He didn't waste energy on gossip or defense. He wrote quietly, to himself, about restraint. That's not silence from fear. That's silence from power. Because power doesn't perform. Power doesn't need applause. Power simply is. So the next time your pride wants to speak, don't. Breathe. Step back. Remember, silence is not submission. It's control. You're not losing the argument. You're mastering it. You're not avoiding the conflict. You're controlling its terms. Quiet is where power collects. Number 2. The silence of the mind. This is the next level, harder, deeper, quieter. The silence of the mind isn't about outer calm, it's about inner stillness. Because even when your mouth is closed, your mind can be screaming, overthinking, replaying, worrying, comparing. That's noise too, the most dangerous kind. You can't build discipline in a noisy mind. You can't focus, plan, or create when your thoughts are chaotic. You need silence, mental silence. That's why monks meditate. That's why elite athletes sit in stillness before battle. That's why CEOs take silent mornings before the world starts demanding their attention. They understand the rule. The mind that can't be still will always be controlled by noise. So train your mind to go quiet, not by force, but by awareness. Observe your thoughts without feeding them. Detach from every story your brain tries to tell. You are not every thought you think. You have a choice. Feed the noise or master the silence. That's the key. Because the mind that can stay still under stress wins. The mind that can focus when the world panics leads. And the mind that can silence fear moves forward when others freeze. Quiet is where power collects. Number 3. The silence of the soul. This is the highest level. It's not about isolation, it's about inner peace. When you reach this level, you stop fighting yourself. You stop needing validation. You stop chasing noise to prove you exist. You move differently. You speak with precision. You listen more than you talk. And people feel your presence without you having to announce it. Because when the soul is quiet, energy becomes focused, and focused energy is unstoppable. This is why the greatest leaders are calm. This is why warriors meditate before war. They aren't empty, they're full of control. They're full of control over their own state of being. That's why the silent ones are often the most powerful, because they've discovered the secret. The real power is in the silence.
They know exactly who they are, and they no longer need to prove it. That's freedom. That's power. That's the discipline of silence. Now here's the hard truth. Silence will scare the undisciplined. When you go quiet, people will misinterpret it. They'll call you distant, cold, arrogant, detached. Let them. That's the noise talking.
The undisciplined fear silence because silence forces reflection, and reflection exposes truth. But you're not here to please noise. You're here to master it. You don't need their permission to be silent. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your peace. You've earned it. So stay still when they expect you to react. Stay calm when they try to provoke. Stay quiet when they try to pull you into chaos. Because when you're silent, you control the tempo. You control the room. You control yourself. That's real dominance. That's real discipline. Let's talk practicality. How do you practice silence daily? Start with 5 minutes. 5 minutes of no talking, no phone, no noise, just breathing, observing, listening. Then expand it. 5 minutes of no reaction when provoked. 5 minutes of no self-judgment when you fail. 5 minutes of not responding to every notification. Silence is a muscle. You train it through restraint. And every rep of silence strengthens your control. You'll notice something. The quieter you become, the clearer your direction gets. Decisions become sharper. Emotions become cleaner. You stop wasting energy on things that don't matter. You realize the more you need to say, the less you actually know. And the less you say, the more you actually understand. That's the paradox of mastery. Here's what silence teaches you. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to react to everything that moves. You just need to be still long enough to see clearly. That's where clarity lives. That's where growth happens. That's where peace begins. Quiet is where power collects. So don't fear silence. Embrace it. Protect it. Use it. Because the world is loud, and that's how it loses focus. But you'll stay quiet. And that's how you'll rise above. You've come full circle now. You've learned that discipline is not just about action. It's about control. You've built habits, crushed negotiation, mastered reaction, and found peace in structure. Now you end where true mastery begins, in silence. Because all power, all clarity, all discipline begins within. And silence is the space where it all connects. Quiet is where power collects. And power in silence is unstoppable. This is the end, but it's also the beginning of your transformation. From this point on, you move with calm precision. You act without noise. You live without seeking validation. You master the chaos by mastering yourself. You have a choice. Stay noisy and lose your focus, or go silent and own your world. Choose silence. Choose power. Choose mastery, because in the end, silence is your superpower. Silence teaches you more about yourself than any conversation ever will, because when the world goes quiet, the real noise begins, your own thoughts. That's why most people avoid silence. They can't stand being alone with themselves. They drown it out with music, with chatter, with endless scrolling. Because silence exposes what you've been running from. But you're not running anymore. You're mastering it. You're choosing silence as a weapon, not a weakness. You see, silence isn't about isolation. It's about integration. It's where you process everything you've been through and everything you're becoming. It's where you collect your thoughts before the next move. It's where you regain clarity before you re-enter the chaos. That's the secret. The strongest people you know have mastered silence. They don't rush to respond. They don't overshare their plans. They move in silence and let their results speak. They understand that silence is not absence, it's presence. Quiet is where power collects. Quiet is where strategy forms.
Quiet is where clarity lives. Every great general, every visionary, every high performer, they protect their silence like gold. They use it to sharpen their awareness, to prepare their next decisive move. Think of the Stoics. Marcus Aurelius wrote in solitude before ruling millions. Think of the monks. They spend years in silence, not because they fear the world, but because they want to master it from within. Think of high performers, CEOs who start their mornings with stillness, soldiers who sit in calm before the mission, athletes who zone out the crowd to focus on their craft. They all understand the same law. Noise is a distraction. Silence is direction.
You have to create room to think, to feel, to plan. Because if you don't, the world will fill your silence with its noise, its opinions, its judgments, its expectations. And then you'll confuse their voices for your own. That's how most people lose themselves. Not through failure, but through distraction. They chase every opinion, every comment, every trend, and end up with no voice of their own. But discipline, real discipline, means you choose silence over validation. You choose peace over proving. You choose solitude over approval. That's how you regain power. That's how you build mental armor. So stop telling everyone your plans. Stop arguing with people who don't understand your path. Stop explaining what doesn't need explaining. Just move, quietly, consistently, ruthlessly. Because when you move in silence, your results become your voice. And when your results speak, they speak louder than words ever could. Remember this: silence isn't passive. It's intentional. It's the focus. It's power under control. Every time you hold back a reaction, that's silence. Every time you choose not to explain yourself, that's silence. Every time you sit still and think before moving, that's silence. You are training restraint. You are training clarity. You are training control. And control, that's the foundation of all discipline. That's the key. You can't master your life if you can't master your silence. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to announce your growth. You don't need to defend your vision. Because the real ones, the disciplined ones, they see it without you saying a word. They feel it in your presence. They sense it in your calm. That's the paradox of power. The quieter you become, the louder your impact grows. Silence is the space between reaction and response. It's the breath between impulse and intention. It's the pause that separates amateurs from masters. Every time you choose that pause, you win. Every time you choose silence over chaos, you evolve. Quiet is where power collects. Say it again. Quiet is where power collects. Because in silence, you can hear the truth about your fears, the truth about your strengths, the truth about what you need to do next. And that truth, that's where transformation begins. You have a choice. You can keep chasing noise, or you can sit in silence and build something that speaks forever. It's not about being seen. It's about becoming undeniable. It's not about talking more. It's about saying less and meaning every word. That's what mastery looks like. That's what discipline feels like. That's what control sounds like. So from now on, protect your silence like your life depends on it. Because it does. Guard it. Honor it. Return to it daily. Make silence your home. Make silence your weapon.
Make silence your superpower. Because when the world gets loud, and it will, your silence will steady you. When people doubt you, your silence will remind you who you are. When chaos surrounds you, your silence will hold the line. Quiet is where power collects. And now, you've collected yours. This is where the audiobook ends, but your discipline journey doesn't. You've learned to stop waiting. You've learned to move first. You've learned that silence is strength. Now, it's your turn to live it, to take everything you've heard and become it, because the goal was never motivation. It was transformation. It was control. Control over your emotions, control over your reactions, control over yourself. If this audiobook spoke to you, don't let it end here. Take 10 seconds right now. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss what's next. And if you felt something powerful, share this with someone who needs that same reminder. Because this message isn't just for you. It's for anyone fighting their own mind in silence. Stay consistent, stay calm, and stay dangerous in your discipline. Because real power doesn't make noise. It moves in silence.